Hi everyone and welcome to this special Roll for Insight video on The Batman. Now, this is a little bit of a weird video. If you've already seen the podcast, you'll already know this, but this video was actually originally recorded as part of the podcast, but we cut it out because we got to it like an hour and 45 minutes into the podcast, and we finished recording the Batman segment nearly 4 hours into the podcast. So we weren't going to release a 4-hour episode. We kind of cut this out of the middle of the podcast and we're releasing it separately, but that's why there's not like a formal intro or anything. But yeah, it's a bit of a mess, but it's a good conversation. It's a good old time. Hope you enjoy it. The Batman.
Oh yeah. Riddle me this. Was it good?
I'll give you an actual riddle. What's black and red and fucking amazing all over? The Batman.
Batman. It was incredible. I must say this.
Yeah,
I know we didn't really want to talk about it
we've
much
been
before.
skirting around talking about it for the last week because it came out exactly a week ago as of us recording this, and I saw it twice within 24 hours. I went to the midnight release and then saw it later that evening. And you saw it on Saturday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, we've kind of dodged talking about it for a week for the most part.
Yeah, I did say though that I had like a couple of little things that I was a bit iffy about, but like nothing, like they're honestly just really small and like didn't ruin the film for me at all. But yeah, I've been excited to at least get into the bigger stuff with Pete because I know that he's got a lot to say.
I've had a good feeling about this film basically from day one. It was originally announced Ben Affleck was going to be doing a Batman solo film in the DCEU, which he was going to write, direct, and star in. And I didn't particularly like Ben Affleck's Batman. Nothing against Ben Affleck, but I didn't like Zack Snyder's world in general or that Batman within it. So I wasn't particularly hyped for that. At some point, if memory serves, Ben Affleck stepped down from director and writer, and Matt Reeves was brought on, but it was still going to be a Ben Affleck Batman movie in the DCU.
It just wasn't happening, and I was actually quite sad about that because
it would have been interesting to see at the very least.
I didn't like Snyder's take on it.
Yeah.
However, if it was going to be written by Ben Affleck and directed by Ben Affleck,
and I'm pretty sure Ben's won awards for his writing before with things like he did Argo, didn't he? That was written by him.
I wouldn't know, but I mean, I knew that he at least cared about the character, and I felt better about it being in his hands rather than Snyder's. And he was willing to give me a Batman film with Deathstroke in it. He was going to have Deathstroke. He was going to have Joe Manganiello. That's how you say it. Always fuck it up. Joe Manganiello in it as Deathstroke. I was finally going to get it, and it just didn't fucking happen. And I was so upset about that.
Real quick, so he did Argo, which was the film I was thinking of, but he didn't write that. He did direct it, but nonetheless, it won a bunch of Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay, and also Best Film and Best Director at the BAFTAs. So, like, he is a very, very good director and probably a pretty good writer as well. So yeah, no, I think he would have done an interesting take on Batman, but I don't particularly care about the DCEU's take on Batman. And it ultimately,
I mean, I got to say, I really did like. I think Ben Affleck was a good pick for Batman.
Mm-hmm.
I think he looks like a decent Bruce Wayne. I think he fills out like the Batman costume very well. I also really loved that Batman's costume. I genuinely still think that might be my favorite Batman costume to this day, just from appearances. Like, but yeah, I think he could have been a really good Batman, except unfortunately it was in the hands of Snyder, and I think he screwed the pooch on it a little bit. But yeah. But now we got a better Batman.
Yes. So then, as I say, I think at one point it was Matt Reeves going to direct Ben Affleck, and then Ben Affleck just went, "I'm done with this character." And more recently, he's kind of been asked about returning, and he is returning for the Flash, but he kind of said, "I think I'm done with that stage in my life." And he kind of, to be honest with you, sounded a little bit put out by the whole experience of playing Batman and it not being very well received, and then the Justice League thing, and yeah. So Then they cast Robert Pattinson. And I was one of those people when people were like, oh, the Twilight guy. I was like, you know nothing. Robert Pattinson's amazing and beautiful and great in everything he's ever been in except for the Twilight movies. And I guess Harry Potter, he wasn't that amazing in either. But he did say in an interview recently that he held his wand like a gun because he thought holding it like a wand was lame. And that's fucking Robert Pattinson for you, baby.
You see, I was directly down the middle there, as I am with Jared Leto, and we had this conversation off podcast. But I know that Callum and Pete hate Jared Leto as an actor, but
and as a person, I'll just call out here everything I know about him as a person. He's a twat, and that might be a judgment call for someone I don't know personally. But every time I hear him talk in an interview or whatever, I'm just like, it was the whole thing with the Suicide Squad where it was like, oh, Jared Leto's been sending used condoms and dead rats to his co-stars. And then he was like a year later, he was asked about it. He was like, yeah, you know, it was really messed up. People started those rumors. I didn't do any of that stuff. He started those rumors. It's literally on the red carpet event for for Suicide Squad when he's like, yeah, this is all the stuff I did to get into the role of the Joker. Like, fuck you fucking pretentious dick. Anyways.
Okay, well,
that's my rant about Jared Leto.
I didn't know about that. I heard about the Ratton thing and I thought it was untrue, but I didn't know he actually started the rumors.
I don't know if he did it, but he was the person who started the rumors about it because he said it in an interview, and then people ran with it. And then a year later, he's like, "It's really messed up how people made this up about me."
Yeah, well, yeah, I didn't know that, but yeah, I don't really know much about Jared Leto as a person. I know that he, you know, in 30 Seconds to Mars, I like their music. It's pretty good. Other than that, I've only ever seen him in Fight Club. I didn't even realize he was in that film. And I've seen him as a Joker. That's all I know about him. And I don't know much about him as a person. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to judge him either way. I think as the Joker, he wasn't very good, but I've also seen the additional scenes, and I actually think he was just written very poorly, and in those additional scenes he was actually much more like the Joker I would have liked to have seen.
Plus, you know, people like the idea of seeing the Joker give Batman a reach around.
Yeah. We don't talk about that.
Guys, Zack Snyder's Justice League is so good. It's so much better than the theatrical cut, which is probably true, but it's so good.
Mean, it is, but like, it's still just like meh, you know? Like it's better than bad, which is, you know,
Zack Snyder's Justice League better than bad. Put that on the fucking poster.
But yeah, I'm really excited for Morbius, for example. I think it looks really good. But same with Robert Pattinson. I've seen him in Harry Potter, and I think I've seen one Twilight movie somewhat against my will because it was on in a room that I was in and other people watching it, and I didn't stick up for myself and say I don't want to watch this shit. So I really hadn't had any exposure to Robert Pattinson other than those two roles, and I was just like, I can't judge him off of those two roles. Like, I'm not going to say he's going to be bad or if he's going to be good. Like, I guess I'll just see. I mean, loads of people hated the idea of Michael Keaton being Batman, and, you know, Batman 89 maybe still is my favorite Batman movie. You know? So it's like, I wasn't going to judge.
Same thing with Heath Ledger when he was cast as Joker. People were like, Heath Ledger, guy from Brokeback Mountain playing the Joker, fuck off.
Yeah. So I was just up for it. I was just like, I mean, he has the jawline.
He definitely has the jawline.
He's English, so he's probably going to be a pretty good actor and can do an American accent well. So, yeah, I was just like, yeah, fuck it, see what he does.
And so they announced him, and so, you know, I've watched a lot of Robert Pattinson films. I think the first time I was like, oh, you're actually a good actor was Water for Elephants, which was years ago, but I've seen him in Lost City of Z, which I personally love. It's an underrated film. I saw him in The Lighthouse, in Good Time, I went and watched, I think it's called Cosmopolitan, because people were talking, like saying, oh, that's proof that he could be a really good Bruce Wayne, is this film, I think it's called Cosmopolitan. So, like, I've seen a lot of his career. He's a fucking phenomenal actor, one of the best working at the moment. So when he was announced, I was like, I'm so fucking in for that. And then they did, like, the costume reveal where they also played the Batman theme, and it was all in red light, and I was like, that's a fucking sick Batman costume, although it totally gave me Daredevil vibes, and Daredevil had just been cancelled, so it also made me bittersweet sad, but it's fine, I'm getting the best of both worlds now, baby. And then...
I think the only thing I wasn't sold on when they revealed the Batman costume was the cowl.
Yeah.
But
How are you feeling about it now that you've seen the whole film of it?
I genuinely, I just forgot about it.
Yeah.
Honestly. Like I love the suit in general. I think it's a really good looking suit, and well, I think the thing I was worried about the most when they revealed it was the stitching on it was very prominent,
Yeah.
and I feel like I just didn't really notice it. Like when it's because I mean, it's the Batman. He's pretty much in shadow the whole fucking time, and I mean it's a black mask. Like
Yeah.
you can't really see it, so it like
That's a different character.
yeah. I don't
Played by
know.
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe they reduced the prominence of the stitches, or maybe I just literally
Well,
just
the
didn't
initial
even
teaser was like
notice.
under like very like strong red lighting as well, like very contrasty lighting. So yeah, it could just be that he's in shadow for most of the film. So,
But yeah, overall, I think it looked really good. I especially think it. I think a big problem with a lot of the Batman costumes, just across all the different films, are sometimes the cowl like just doesn't sit right on the actor's face, and it just looks a bit goofy.
yeah,
But like,
I think for me, the Michael Keaton and the Tim Burton Joel Schumacher film cowls are like, and they're obviously much older, but they're like, ooh, those really don't look great.
yeah, and with this cowl, I felt like it was just form fitting, like it just fit him perfectly with his head shape and everything, and I just think it looked
But
really good.
one of the genius things I think they did is it's like the top part is its own bit. It's not all one cowl from the neck up, which is what basically every other Batman cowl has been, the exception of Christian Bale's second Batsuit, where it's from this part of like the jaw upwards is one piece.
Yeah,
And so you're not kind of trying to mold this head shape. You're just kind of molding like the eyes and forehead area, and then the jaw is mostly exposed. It's the most exposed a bat cowl has ever been. Actually, I'm trying to think of what Ben Affleck's one looks like. Maybe Ben Affleck's is about this. I feel like Rob's is still more exposed, but Ben Affleck's pretty big mouth opening as well. And yeah, so I think it's a really well like articulated design. It's got big ears, which I like my Batman with big ears. Maybe not as big as the DC Pets one, but
yeah.
I do like me some big ears. So yeah. But and then they did the DC Fandom trailer, and I was just like, I think I watched that literally like 30, 40 times. Like every day I was watching it multiple times for like a couple of weeks because I was just so fucking hyped for that movie. And then they released a second trailer, and it was the exact same. And then I went, I'm not going to watch anything else because I'm already too hyped for this film. And so going into it at midnight release, I was actually genuinely worried because I usually try and underhype everything. I try and watch one trailer and that's it, and then go into something with not low expectations, but like moderated expectations. And I went into this film going, this is going to be the best Batman ever. And I'm glad to say that I came out going, this is the best Batman ever. So
Yeah, I mean, just on the topic of costumes and everything, the one thing I was worried about from the get go was the Riddler, because I've made this joke many
hold on.
times.
I just realized we started talking about the Batman. Haven't done this. We're going to talk about spoilers in the Batman. We might not talk. Are you going to talk about spoilers with the Riddler's costume now, or because we haven't gone into any spoiler yet? So we can...
No, not really. I mean, everything that I'm going to say is Riddler in the trailer. So
we'll do non-spoiler stuff first, then. But I just wanted to make sure we didn't accidentally like go into spoilers without saying up at the top. So we'll say.
Yeah, no, I've been holding off of spoilers for when we want to get into it anyway.
Cool. So Riddler
Um,
costume.
yeah, I mean, as soon as I saw the Riddler costume, I was like, he's wearing a gimp suit.
No, he's
Like,
wearing a winter tactical mask.
yeah, well, that's apparently what it is called. But to me, it looked very much like a gimp suit, and I was like, I mean, okay, I understand not wanting to wear, the question mark riddled spandex, um, and the top hat and the little mask and the cane and whatever. I can understand why they wouldn't want to do that in this type of film, but like, really, like
Yeah,
it.
and a lot of people were saying like the Arkham games have some really cool but like grounded, gritty, and dirty
Mm,
Riddler costumes where it's like evoking the comic books, but it's just like awful and filthy and realistic, particularly
yeah,
Arkham Knight. And yeah, I can see where they're coming from that. But you were going to say, so that was like a worry at
yeah,
first. Is that like still coming away with it, not being happy with the look, or
it is. It is still one of my like small little things about the movie that I wasn't 100% sold on.
Mhm.
I really like the Riddler as a character. I think he absolutely knocked it out of the park. Paul Dano as a Riddler, brilliant casting choice.
I mean,
And
it's worth just saying like right off the bat, pretty much every single like I can't think of a single actor that I was like you were miscast. Right? Everyone like fucking knocks it out of the park. There are some that like steal scenes they're in, but like yeah, Paul Dano fucking fantastic, Zoe Kravitz fucking fantastic.
yeah, I will go on to talk about a little thing that I was like,
Okay,
"Ooh, that was a bit weird on one of the actors' parts," but yeah, I'll get into that later. Um, but yeah, I love the actual like characterization, but the costume for me, I was just like, okay, I know it's meant to be dark and gritty and whatever, and I don't think it's any secret considering it was in the trailer. He's very serial killer-esque,
mm-hmm. It's like
and I,
pretty much straight up like Seven is a big inspiration for this film. The Zodiac Killer is a big inspiration for this film, both
mm,
the film Zodiac Killer and also the actual killer. So it's very much inspired by those like serial killers from those pieces, and yeah.
yeah, and I can get why they would want to go for more of a I don't know like what you'd call it, not exactly toned down, but like a more so that he was more hidden,
Mm.
basically.
Subtle. Here we go.
So he was kind of more indescribable than
Yeah, yeah.
anything. But like a big part of the Riddler for me, and in a lot of different mediums and everything, is he is so narcissistic. I mean, he is literally like a serial killer, and they have these narcissistic and psychopathic tendencies, and he is the epitome of that. He does these riddles and everything because he wants to know that he wants people to know that he is doing these things. The point is he's untouchable because he hides himself away, and they have to go through all these riddles to then eventually get him. It's not like he ever wants to not be caught, because realistically he wants people to know that he's the one that has done all of this.
Mm.
And to me, the just regardless of what the costume actually looks like, the fact that he wore this big old mask and everything and whatever, I'm like, I just, it didn't feel much like the characters.
Fair enough.
Um,
I feel like I can't respond too much to these opinions without going into spoilers, so I might park my response until we get into spoiler talk.
yeah,
But
but and I have a feeling that I know what you're probably going to say as a counterpoint.
mm. And to be fair though, I don't wholly disagree with you either. I do think that I don't mind his costume, but it definitely feels like a departure from Riddler. But in the same way that a lot of Nolan's Batman stuff, particularly Bane, feels like a pretty strong departure from the comic books. It's that same sort of vibe. Where it's
Which
like
I also didn't like.
sure.
So it's not like a new thing for me.
Mm.
I'm one of those guys that I do like things to be as comic book accurate as like possible to, not so much that it takes away from, whatever sort of vibe they're going for, like the noir sort of thing. I don't want it to be too over the top, but like for Bane, for example, it was just such a difference in like aesthetic and the way he was like played and everything, where I was just like, in my mind, yeah, in my mind, I was just like, well, this isn't Bane.
But I'm Bane. Also, this is my Tom Hardy mug. So this is really ironic. I just grabbed the nearest coffee mug, but it's the Tom Hardy mug I was given at work.
But yeah, like I really didn't like that Bane, because it just wasn't Bane, in my opinion. Like they could have literally just called him something completely different, and he still would have been a really good villain, because it wasn't even his backstory.
It wasn't his backstory. It wasn't his characterization, because like so much of his agency is taken away at the end of the film.
Yeah, and I was just like, well, you might as well have just had him be some like lackey that is posing as like this supervillain, but actually he's working for Ra's al Ghul, and whatever. And yeah, as I said, they could have given him a different name, and he still would have been a really good villain.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't do that, and instead they called him Bane. And I was just like, well, now I'm disappointed because I didn't see Bane.
Yeah, that's fair. But I think what makes the Riddler pill easier to swallow is that characterization-wise, I think he is pretty fucking close to the Riddler. And it's,
I would agree.
Without going into too much spoiler territory, this is year 2 of the Batman. This is stuff they've said about in the marketing. It's year 2 of Batman, so it's early days for both Batman, and therefore any other character that appears within this film is like not necessarily the full version from the comics. So this Riddler is the Riddler, and it feels like the Riddler, but at the same time there's an element that feels like maybe this is a bit of a prototype Riddler. And again, I'll dive in deeper into that with spoiler talk, but like theoretically, if they brought Riddler back in a subsequent film, I could imagine them going in a slightly more comic booky look. The other thing is, again, without going into spoilers, the Riddler in this film very much has a purpose, a point that they're trying to get across. They're on a mission. And a lot of the time in the comic books, Riddler is doing his thing because he's pissed off at Batman, and he's like, "You're not the smartest guy in Gotham. Fuck you. I'm going to prove them wrong. You don't deserve to be held up to this esteem." And that's not really what they're doing in this film. So again, there could be room to do that kind of motivation if they ever bring Riddler back. At the same time, and this is one of my minor problems with doing big budget superhero films rather than television shows or whatever, there's a very good chance we'll never get to have Riddler back. If they're only going to do a trilogy of films, they might not bring Riddler back, and that's going to be such a shame because Paul Dano fucking is great as Riddler, and it's anyways. So I really hope they just do like 20 of these films or something ridiculous. Don't just do a trilogy, man. But if you do a trilogy, I'm sure it'll be great. But yeah, it's
something that I don't know if we skipped over it because we were waiting for this, but they have announced that there's going to be a Penguin show.
Yeah, so there's an announced Penguin show.
And a Gotham PD show, I think.
On that one. So Penguin is definitely going to be in it's going to be Colin Farrell returning as Penguin for a Penguin TV show. They haven't said it's a prequel. And again, we can maybe get into that a little bit in spoilers, but it's about Penguin's rise to power. Sounds cool. There was also a Gotham PD show, and both of these were announced a while ago, but then the Penguin show has been like officially like, yes, we're 100% doing it. The Gotham PD show apparently is no longer really going ahead, but has kind of, and Matt Reeves has said that they might return to that idea, but that the idea they were exploring has become more of a TV show about Arkham, and he described it as like a haunted house sort of story set with Arkham Asylum.
There's going to be an Arkham Asylum show, isn't there?
Yes. So apparently the Gotham PD show, at some point in the development, that transitioned into the Arkham show. But he has also said that there's a possibility that they would return to the Gotham PD show at some point. So I don't think it's literally, like some people reported it as, the Gotham PD show is now called Arkham. No, the Gotham PD show has been shelved, and the development of that show turned into Arkham, which is also not confirmed to be its title. It's a show about Arkham. But that sounds cool. I think if you're going to do like an Arkham show, I really hope that they do some of the weirder Arkham stuff, like what's his name? Not Academus, Amadeus Arkham. Is that his name?
Um,
The founder of Arkham Asylum. It's something like Amadeus Arkham.
yeah, I think you.
You're gonna make me
mm,
Google it.
Yeah, I don't think it's Amadeus. You might be right, but it's not hitting 100% with me.
It is Amadeus Arkham.
No, okay then.
I'm a fucking champion. Um, yeah, so like bring in some of the Amadeus Arkham stuff from the comics, bring in weird characters like Clayface is such a cool character that you could
Calendar
do.
Man.
Calendar Man. Uh, if you can bring back Paul Dano as Riddler.
Oh, the best supervillain that we've yet to see in a movie, Condiment King.
Yeah, sure. You could you could do things like have Hugo Strange be one of the villains as like a psychiatric scientist at Arkham doing like sick experiments on the patients. Like there's a lot of potential there, but if you're gonna do it, don't just have it be the kind of like the bog standard serial killers like Zaz and Calendar Man's cool, but like it'd be a bit boring. Do some of the weirder ones as well. Do some of the like slightly supernatural ones. Matt Reeves has said that he's not super interested at the moment in doing supernatural stuff with the Batman, with his vision of Batman, but I really hope that they don't just completely stray away from it like Nolan did. Do some of it. You don't have to go like full blown crazy. And it's also worth noting Matt Reeves has said that one of the things he would be interested in doing in a sequel is Mr. Freeze, who is not supernatural but is a little bit more out there than some of the stuff we see in this film. So like, basically what I'm saying is don't shy away from the comic bookiness of some of the comic book villains. Do them, but if you want to do them in a kind of weird, grounded way, like I think I recommended the show before on the podcast. There's a brilliant Tom Hardy show called Taboo. And the whole time that you're watching Taboo, you don't know whether there's actually magic and ghosts and whatever in the show, because like he claims to have like voodoo magic and he can like visit people in their dreams or whatever. But he could also just be fucking batshit insane and he's convincing people that what he's saying is true. The show never really confirms one way or the other. You could totally take that sort of angle with some of the weirder things with Arkham. Maybe not Clayface, that might be a bit harder to do, but like the Amadeus Arkham stuff you could do is like, is there actual like curses and rifts in Gotham, or is this just an absolutely insane man? Like, so yeah.
I think going off what you just said about him not wanting to do, sort of all the super powered metahuman type stuff.
And he did say at
least,
the moment, yeah. So
yeah,
he might change his mind, but
it does give me a little bit more hope that in the movies we might get to see Deathstroke.
Yeah, maybe. So those projects are in development. The Penguin has like officially had like a tweet out by DC, meaning it's like in production at some point soon. Mm-hmm. The Arkham show is just in development, so that might not see the light of day, or it might be several years from now. There's also a sequel confirmed, although when that's going to be... Actually, I don't know whether Warner Brothers has officially confirmed that there's a sequel being made. The producer has talked about a sequel. Matt Reeves has talked about a sequel, but I don't know whether Warner Brothers has officially gone, yes, you're making a sequel. That being said, it's the biggest film since the pandemic started by quite a lot, so they would be insane to not make a sequel. Yeah. Shall we get into non-spoilery stuff that we like? We've kind of talked about the bat suit, but what about character performances and story and stuff?
I mean, yeah. I mean, overall, I thought it was all just really good. I mean, I think I said again when we were playing D&D that there are a few moments in the film where I was like, oh, it's coming to an end. And then it didn't. And I was like I wasn't disappointed or anything. It was more of just like, that just felt like kind of strange to me, It's like it was like there was moments where they were like, oh, yeah, we maybe we'll just end the film here. And then They were just like, oh, but then this could happen, and it was like they just kept adding on to it, and I was like, I
I'm
mean,
really
fuck it, it's more of the film, so I'm not going to complain, but like,
I'm really curious to hear where you first thought the film was going to end, because this film does have kind of like multiple endings, a little bit like Return of the King or what have you. But like I've seen some people be like, "Oh, I thought the film was ending at this point." I'm like, "How? That's like halfway through the film." So I'm like really curious to hear when you thought the film was coming to a close for the first time. Um, but yeah, this is my favorite take on Gotham ever in live action. I think before that it was Tim Burton's Gotham, which is beautiful, but Tim Burton's Gotham is brilliant and gothic and crazy, but kind of doesn't really feel like a real city. And this just like slightly edges it out by still being gothic and, you know, grand, but also feeling like a real city, and it's grimy, but you get the sense that people live in it, and Gotham feels like a character in this film, and you really see how not just the criminals but the people of Gotham view the Batman. That's like such a good choice. And you know, the DCEU version of Gotham just kind of felt like Detroit, and the Nolan version of Gotham, the first film, Batman Begins, I think has a decent Gotham in the
oh
Narrows.
yeah, I really like the Gotham in Batman Begins, but I feel like from that point on,
It's
it
Chicago
yeah, it's just a city,
because
you
they
know.
filmed it
It's
in
like
Chicago, and they don't try and hide the fact that it's just Chicago, and
yeah,
like that works for like if you wanted the equivalent of Gotham Wall Street, that could look like just a modern city, I guess. But yeah, Gotham should feel like Gotham has a personality in the comic books, and this film just fucking nailed it. It's almost always raining. I don't think you ever see Gotham in like full daylight. It's always either full nighttime or sunrise or sunset. So like it's always like, you know, you never see it properly in that sense. Um, it's not got a recognizable skyline. Not that I would recognize Chicago's skyline, but other people have said that they recognize Chicago's skyline in The Dark Knight or The Dark Knight Rises. This film actually used the volume that they used for The Mandalorian and such like. They used that for some scenes. So like when he's standing on the building where they have the bat signal, like that's a virtual set that they're on,
mm,
and the result of that is that you see like this massive city expanse that isn't just an existing city, which I think really helps as well. Like it's got its own geography and such like. Um,
yeah. I just want to say before we go on it, I feel like Batman Begins. The reason I think it, and this isn't exactly a great reason, but I think it definitely added to it. The reason I think it looked better than the second and third is because it was very yellow.
yeah,
Um,
it's fair.
I don't know what they did to why I don't know why they made it so yellow, but like it definitely
Well, it's part of the cinematography style, and I would liken it to Daredevil, where Daredevil season one is fucking gorgeous to look at. It's got like some really rich colors and stuff, and like it feels like a comic book come to life because Daredevil's like in a street and it's tipping it down with rain. And he's bathed in blue and yellow light and it's not quite realistic, but it's not quite unrealistic either. It's like it's stylized, but not ridiculously so. And then you compare that to Daredevil season 3, which I still think Daredevil season 3 looks beautiful and has some beautiful cinematography, but it feels like it's set in the real world. It's shot with very naturalistic colors and such like. And the same thing is true with Batman Begins and The Batman, is that they've got this really rich texture to the filmography or the cinematography and the color palette that they're using and everything. And it's a little bit enhanced, a little bit graphic novel-esque. And then The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises feel like they're shot in a realistic way, and that's kind of Christopher Nolan's style for the most part, is realistic shooting, which means that they can be pretty, but they're also a little bit boring. Like you can do much more interesting stuff with your cinematography when you're doing a graphic novel, and why wouldn't you? Is my question. Like, I mean, it's I guess preference thing, and obviously with the Nolan trilogy, it's supposed to be if Batman was in the real world, but I would rather take that slightly stylized approach that the Batman has over it.
yeah, and I think like the point the reason I brought up the fact that it was like yellow and everything is because I want to say I think like the color of the film really like makes or breaks a setting,
Hmm.
because like there are so many times in the Batman where obviously it is like very dark, and as you said, it's pretty much always raining, it's always at night and whatever, and like it is just dark pretty much all the time. But then you have the scenes, like for example, it shows part of Gotham where it has like all of, the sort of like billboards and like TVs on the walls and everything, that are just like really bright and have popping colors, and it kind of like shows, the Gothamites going about their business and whatever. And I just think I thought that was really good cinematography,
Yeah.
because like obviously a lot of what you see in Gotham is like a lot of, usually high-rise buildings and stuff, and you know dark and gloomy and whatever. But also, it isn't always like that. There is also color in the city.
Mm.
And I feel like just seeing small glimpses of that just really sort of brings it to life. Like, because a lot of the time you can just think, why would people live in this city?
Yeah.
Like if it's always like this. And then you see parts of that and you see people just together with all these bright lights and everything. And you're like, it is a living, breathing city.
And,
It just brings it to life.
And the thing I really like as well, there's a couple of sequences where Batman is looking over Gotham during sunrise or sunset, and you go, "Oh, this is a really beautiful city. Like, it's a beautiful view." And what I like about that is it also gets this feeling of like that's the only time that the Batman almost has peace is when he's not fighting at night anymore, and the sun's risen, the criminals have all run away, and he's like, "I can breathe now." And that's when you can see, oh, Gotham's actually got some beauty to it. And then he has to, go back to his tower and back to his isolation and everything, and then he's in the Batcave, and that's all dark, and Wayne Tower, because he doesn't live in Wayne Manor in this film, he lives in Wayne Tower. It is very gothic and dark, and he wears sunglasses inside because he's literally nocturnal, and yeah, it's like, as I say, that those certain sequences, like there's just such a beautiful richness in the cinematography because shots have meaning to them. It's not just like pretty shots. There's stuff you can peel back from it and get the intention behind those shots.
It's like he fought for that sunrise.
Exactly, yeah, and it's also, I guess this is minor spoilers, but it's in the trailer. A lot of those shots also happen to be, or sequences happen to be, when he's with Selina, and so there's an element of that as well. But I also this is very basic cinematography talk here, but I really like when films kind of go, we have a color palette that we're going to utilize a lot in the film. And if you look at the marketing for the Batman, whether it's the logo or the posters or whatever, the color of this film is red, like blood red. And it's used multiple times during the film. You've probably seen a bunch of them in the trailer. I'm not going to pull out particular moments at the moment because I'm avoiding spoilers, but I really, really like that. Again, Matt Reeves has said, and Robert Pattinson have said that they'd be interested in potentially doing a Mr. Freeze story in a sequel. And I've seen people like say they should do that, and the color palette should be like an icy blue. And I'm like, that would be so good. That would be so, like, completely contrasting with the first one, but like totally, yeah. But yeah, no. So I think without a doubt, the best looking Batman in terms of the film itself. Also, I love the bat suit, but it's just like every single shot is a visual feast. Like, one of my favorite shots in the film is literally just a close up of Bruce Wayne's eyes when he's looking back at some footage, and it's just like a close up with like the screens reflecting in his eyes, and it's like he's like bloodshot, and it's just like, oof, it's just like it's just a beautiful shot. But anything else you want to say that's non-spoilery, or?
I guess, I mean, there have been pictures released of Catwoman in, her full get up.
Yeah.
So it's not really a spoiler, but another thing I wasn't, again, it's so small, but like another thing that I wasn't too fond of was I don't like her hairstyle. Uh, it is. I know that in a lot of different media, she has short hair, but it just looked to me like they just took a pair of scissors to her hair and they were just fucking whatever, you know. Like again, it's so small,
To
but
be
I was
fair,
just like, oh man.
it might be that she cuts her own hair because she's not very well off. To be fair,
I mean, it may be. I mean, I thought maybe there is a reason, you know.
but also
And
I
I'm
fucking
not
love her
just
hairstyle. So
yeah. I just it's not even the fact that it's like on a woman. I just think if it was on a guy, it would just be just as awful. Um, but overall, I thought Catwoman was a really great character and she was portrayed very well. So it was just like something very smooth for me. And also, I really don't like her mask. Really don't. I think it's stupid, honestly. It just covers her nose. What's the point of that?
um,
Literally just to secure it on her face? Like,
I think it's probably just to stop her hair from being left on scenes of crimes because it's a half balaclava basically, like they're real things that some people wear.
no, but I just wish it had like the piece that comes down from, the brow line because I just think that would look so much better than literally just having all of this open and all of this open. It literally just goes like that. And I think it looks so dumb.
I mean, to me, it looks like a normal half mask balaclava, but they've clearly like edited it so that it has like a slight cat ear silhouette. It's worth noting she's not cat like the way Zoe Kravitz has talked about her role in this film. She's not Catwoman in this film. She is Selena Kyle, who is a thief, but she hasn't become Catwoman yet. In the same way that you could say other characters have not fully realized the version that they will be in the comics at some point. So the way that they've
I
talked
would
about,
dispute that, but
okay, can you dispute that without going into spoilers, or are we okay? We're getting very close to that line then, but I'll just finish that and say, so I think if we see her again, we're likely to see her in a proper Catwoman costume. And if so, I really hope they do a proper Catwoman costume and not the Anne Hathaway thing where her goggles are just ear-shaped. Like, nah, give me a proper Catwoman costume. But like, it's
I mean, I would like a proper Catwoman costume, I agree, but also I did really like Anne Hathaway's costume. I just thought that was pretty neat. I thought it was a
fair
pretty
enough,
cool idea to bring into like the sort of modern era.
I guess, but just give me a Catwoman costume. um,
Yeah.
but no, the final thing I'll say with this film is that there have been a lot of superhero films, and a lot of superhero films take inspiration from various comic book runs and narratives, and sometimes they'll even name themselves after that. So a lot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe films are directly named after comic runs: Age of Ultron, Civil War, Infinity War. Those are actually the only three I can think of. But that's still a handful, and a lot of them still take from comic books without directly being named after them. Every single time they've been fun, and you've been able to recognize where inspiration has come from and what have you. But this is the first time ever when watching a superhero film where it felt like, in the same way that sometimes when you're watching a film based on a novel and you feel like you're watching the novel brought to life on screen, this felt like reading things like Year One, like The Long Halloween, just brought to life. It felt so true to, and again, this is with a character like Batman who's been around for so long, people are going to have different opinions of who Batman is and what Batman should be on screen. But for my version of Batman, what I take away when I read the comic books, and I've got a bunch of Batman graphic novels that I've brought back from my parents, but The Long Halloween has always been my favorite graphic novel. This is like the definitive Batman experience to me. It felt so much like that I was just like, just in awe, just in love, that like it finally felt true to the comics to me. And someone else might watch that and go, that's not who I think of when I think of Batman. I think of him as being like the ninja guy, and there's not a lot of that in this film necessarily. So, it might not be that for everyone, but for me, I was just like, yeah, it's the first time it's felt like an actual And it's not a direct adaptation of any comic book, although it's taking it from a lot, but it just felt so true to the source material to me.
Yeah, it's difficult for me because a lot of the Batman films that we've seen so far, well, pretty much all but maybe just all of them. I'm not even gonna count Batman and Robin because Robin was like a fucking adult and you never get to see the father-son relationship. But a lot of the media that I particularly like with Batman in, the ones that I gravitate to are the ones with at least some of the Bat family in, and I particularly like Bat Dad. You know, like I love seeing his relationship with Dick. And I'm the thing that I was gonna say that started the whole sentence was I'm a big
Big Dick
Red
fan.
Hood. I'm a no big Red Hood fanboy, and uh, I love Red Hood. I think the Jason Todd character is really good, and I love seeing the way that Batman interacts with him and Dick, especially because obviously you have the first son who grows up to become Nightwing and is kind of like a better man than Bruce could ever hope to be, just because he learned a lot from Batman, but also kept his own morals and you know just became his own superhero, and so he kind of
He didn't let the Crusade destroy him, and
yeah.
I think the Bat family is what brings Bruce back from being completely destroyed by his Crusade, but he's far enough gone that he's never gonna like fully redeem himself in that way. And
Exactly.
Dick doesn't fall far enough in the first place that he manages to, and it's why I didn't particularly love. I've only seen the first 2 seasons of Titans, but Dick felt like he'd already fallen as far as Bruce had at the beginning of
Yeah,
Titans. And it's like
that's
no,
why I didn't like him as well.
Dick is the ideal. That's what Bruce Wayne wished he could be.
Yeah.
So yeah. No, sorry, I cut
And
you off there.
yeah, no worries. And yeah, so you know, I it's no secret. I really want a Red Hood film. Just anything to do with Red Hood. I crave it. I've like as I said on I think the last podcast probably, I started watching Titan season 3 because I knew Red Hood was going to be in it, and it just doesn't cut it for me. I was saying to Pete the other day, I would love for them to do like a Red Hood and the Outlaws movie. I think that would be so unique and so fun, and especially if it's done right, it could just be amazing.
I mean, they're
And
doing a DCEU Batgirl film as well, so it doesn't have to be even related to the Batman with the Matt Reeves version. They could do a DCEU Red Hood and the Outlaws fairly easily. Particularly if I think I can't remember actually. There is a dead Robin in the DCEU, but I think Zack Snyder might have said that it was Dick Grayson who died, but it's implied to be in a very similar way to how Jason Todd died. But anyways, they could still do a Red Hood and the Outlaws thing because they could disregard what Zack said or just say that there was a second Robin who also died or whatever. But
I mean, there were a few rumors going around that it could have been Tim Drake and it might have been a Batman the Animated Series type deal where the original Joker is dead and Tim Drake went on to become this new Joker.
if Jared
But I think
Leto's
that
Joker was Tim Drake, that would depress me so much because I fucking love Tim Drake.
I don't think it was. I think it was deconfirmed.
Okay,
so,
but like, I hate Jared Leto's Joker so much, and I like Tim Drake so much that would just destroy me inside.
I mean, I think that could have been a decent idea if they
Imagine Tim Drake fucking
well,
tattooing damaged on his forehead, just like, oh no. Tim.
But
anyway, yes.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. Like, I really want to see Red Hood, and part of why I love Red Hood so much is his connection to Bruce and Batman, because that is one of Batman, in his mind's biggest failings.
What's great about the first 3 Robins, and I like Damian Wayne as well, but the first 3 Robins are just such a beautiful encapsulation of Bruce Wayne, where you've got what Bruce Wayne could be, the idealistic hero, the person who people look up to and is a symbol of hope. Red Hood, the anger, the rage, the fear. Tim Drake, the level-headed detective. And Bruce Wayne, wishes he could be all three of those together, and he is elements of all three of those together, but he's not all the extremes, you know. Yeah.
And part of why I love Batman so much, and as I said, a lot of the media that I gravitate to is when he has the Bat family with it, because I feel like when he has the Bat family with him, you can go into his character a lot more. Because when he's just by himself, you know, it kind of just it's the same old story, you know. It's like kind of going into why he fights and, you know, his morality behind it, and, you know, oh, I fight alone and blah blah blah. But when you insert members of the Bat family, as you said, they are the ones that bring him back from the brink. And I think that's a much more interesting Batman concept, because you can then do much more with a character without then like having to like cross a line and then not really being able to bring him back, because it's like, well, would he come back from that, like, realistically, if there is no one else there to sort of help him? And
I mean,
I've always
the Dark Knight Returns is, I have a complicated relationship with the Dark Knight Returns because I like it as a comic book. It's some people's favorite Batman comic book. I kind of hate the fact that it's some people's favorite Batman comic book, because so many people like quote The Dark Knight Returns as like the definitive Batman, and then you get someone like Zack Snyder's Batman where it's like The Dark Knight Returns Batman. I'm like, that's an offshoot. That's a what if Batman. Like, it's cool, but that's not who Batman should be. And like, you can do it, but I feel like starting that friend. Anyways, but what the Dark Knight Returns Batman, I think, is Batman without the Bat family. He goes on too long. He's not got anyone else anymore. That's what he becomes, is that. And it's the Bat family that ensures that he does, along with other characters like, you know, Superman also has a good enough relationship with Bruce most of the time that he could stop him. But like, it's the people that, when Batman allows himself to start working as a team and letting people in, that's when he stops being the monster. He stops being the Batman, the symbol of fear, and starts becoming something better. So, in short, I completely agree with you. I really want to see the Bat family on screen.
Yeah, and like, yeah, you were saying that, you know, your favorite Batman graphic novel or comic run is Long Halloween. Well, mine is Under the Red Hood, because, like, obviously, Red Hood as a character is meant to be, you know, Batman basically if he just gave up his moral code and just went about his business, you know. And the thing that I loved so much about that whole thing was when Red Hood and, you know, Batman come face to face, and Batman still hasn't quite pieced together that it's Jason yet, and he unmasks himself. He is staring his failure in the face.
His biggest failure.
You know?
Like,
yeah. And like, when Batman's alone and he's facing off a villain, it's like he can keep his code to himself and do whatever he needs to do. And no matter what a villain can say or do, it doesn't really faze him that much, because he's so self-righteous in his own, you know, way about, you know, how he does things, that because they're villains, he kind of like writes it off. But when he's coming face to face with his biggest failure, who he, you know, thought was in his own twisted way doing the right thing by, you know, helping this kid and also bringing someone else into his crusade, but then seeing what that has done to that person, it makes him start like questioning himself, which is something that no other villain can really do that much, you know? And I think the Batman is actually contrary to that. I think that what they do in this film is actually really good for that.
Well, the thing is, as well, Robert Pattinson has explicitly said that he would love to have a Robin, but he said that he would want to do it right and have it be like a 13-year-old actor playing Robin and start with Robin as a kid. And again, without going into spoilers, I was totally fine with Bale not having a Robin. I'm fine with Ben Affleck not having a Robin. Not in the sense of like I wouldn't have liked to have seen it, but like I don't mind the fact that they didn't. But I think it would be such a missed opportunity if Robert Pattinson's Batman never has at least one Robin. He is so primed to have such an we can't really get into it too much without spoilers, but like there is such a great depth to this character that I really could see a Bat family story really, really working with this version of the character.
I think it would have to definitely be towards the end of the trilogy, though, because he's so early on in his career at the moment that I just don't think it would work. But I definitely want it because, as I said,
this is why I want more than a trilogy, is because my ideal would be like maybe introduce, if you're going to do the full Bat family, introduce Dick Grayson in 2, but don't like hint to it. Like maybe have him meet Dick Grayson and the Flying Graysons in passing or something, and then people be like, and in the third film, what happens to the Flying Graysons happens to the Flying Graysons, and the third film explores the recruitment of Robin, blah, 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 blah. And then do a fourth film where Dick Grayson leaves and Jason comes in, maybe a fifth film if you're really pushing it, but fourth film probably to, keep it going. Then have Jason die, and the sixth film you have Tim Drake come in, and but then Red Hood shows up as well, because it might as well combine those two together at the same time. Why not? And I think, but you need a lot of films to do that, but you do need time to get to that point. You can't do it too quickly. So yeah.
but yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I love Batman on his own. The Dark Knight fighting a single man crusade. It's a tale as old as time. Who doesn't want to see that?
But it's also a tale of as old a time, and we've seen it a lot of times.
Yeah, I'm kind of sick of it. I kind of want to see the Bat family brought into it and actually have a more, not exactly rounded Batman, because he's not ever really that rounded.
But more depth. It's more of like it's an angle we haven't seen ever on the silver screen, because as you say, you discount Robin from Batman and Batman Forever because they don't have that relationship. It's Robin in lip service in those two films. It's not really Robin. Yeah. So
I want to see Batman actually accepting something new into his life and then seeing how that affects him, because we haven't had that on screen, and I think that would just be amazing. That's all I want from a Batman film now going forward. Is I just want to see some of the Bat family come into it, and actually have the father-son relationship. Maybe it's going to be rocky at first because they never really have like a proper sort of father-son relationship. It's very strained pretty much all the time, but like you have those moments where Bruce does show that he actually cares about his family, and that's when you actually get to see like that little part of Bruce that didn't die that night in Crime Alley come out. And that's what I think makes Batman such a great character. And I just think it's such a shame that we haven't got to see that on screen yet.
Should we go into spoilers?
Yes.
Because then we can go even deeper. But also, I've just looked over at OBS, and maybe this will be in the episode or maybe it won't be. We've been going for 2 3/4 hours. Should we maybe lift the Batman talk and still do the spoiler talk now, but lift it and release that as a roll for insight on the Batman? I'll just do like a little intro at the beginning and just be like, hey, this was originally part of the podcast, but it went on for so long that we're releasing it separately, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Probably.
Cool. Spoiler talk then. This film has a pretty cool intro. I like the Riddler's intro of brutally murdering the mayor and stuff. But that is the coolest fucking intro of the Batman ever, right?
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
I when it was announced that he was doing narration for the film, I was so on board with that because he narrates himself in the comics and it's very noir detective. His narration, and you're watching the fear that the criminal element of Gotham has over the Batman as they're seeing the bat signal and freaking the fuck out, and then he shows up and just pummels those people, and then they all run off and there's that civilian left saying, please don't hurt me, and he just silently looks up at the bat signal and it cuts the neck. It's just like, it so sets the scene of who this Batman is, how the criminals in Gotham view him, how the people of Gotham view him,
the PD of Gotham view him.
Exactly, and all of it done in 5 minutes. The entire I don't want to shit talk the Nolan trilogy. I really like the Nolan trilogy. All 3 of the films I think are good. It's a really good trilogy. Nolan's a fantastic filmmaker, but that entire trilogy is in some ways about Batman being a symbol that is in part about fear and instilling fear, and this film did a better job of translating that in 5 minutes than Nolan did an entire trilogy.
I think I said the other day that I rewatched Batman Begins and I really love it. And I think that movie in particular does the fear aspect well. Like when he first becomes Batman and he,
that first fight
he goes
on the
to
docks.
the shipping container fight scene, and he's, like literally like it's dead silent, this guy looking around.
Yeah.
And well, I mean, I love that scene, but what I like more is when it's like dead silent and there's a guy just looking around, and then suddenly you just hear, ah! And he just gets like yanked into a container into just darkness, and I'm just like, that's really fucking good. And they didn't really do anything like that going forward, because that is the debut of the Batman, and then because we get to see more of like the film from Batman's sort of perspective, it kind of takes away the theatricality of it,
I mean, there is also the scene when he confronts Scarecrow, and like the guys are like, "What is that?" And Scarecrow goes, "It's the Batman." And then one of the guys is like, "I've heard he can fly." And so that scene's pretty good as well. But yeah, the rest of the trilogy doesn't really nail it for me. And there's still cool moments and stuff, but it's you don't get the sense that people are truly terrified of the Batman for the rest of the trilogy.
Like the line from the Batman that I think everyone was talking about after it was like, "Oh, when that signal lights up in the sky, it's not just."
I've got the quote down.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
"We've got a signal now, but when that light hits the sky, it's not just a call; it's a warning. Here is a tool." And I can't remember the rest of it, but like that's the segment everyone's quoting.
I think that line was incredible, along with
also
like,
his voice, sequence. Robert Pattinson's Batman voice. It's my favorite Batman voice. Like, I'm so glad it's not modulated like Affleck's. I'm so glad it's not Bale, which I don't actually dislike Bale's Batman voice, but it's like it's so iconic to Bale that no one could ever try and do it again. It just wouldn't work. But like this kind of like gravelly, whispery voice, it's great. Love it.
Yeah, but that whole sequence, I was like, this encapsulates, what Batman should be. He is a myth almost to these people, and like going forward in the film, like I think another scene that really hit me was like when the Riddler had the DA drive into the funeral, and then the Batman comes in afterwards, and like you just see like one of the cops at the door look through and just see the Batman walk in, and even he's like, holy shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Like just the fact that everyone is like, is this guy even real? Like, is he like,
except for that one dumbass at the beginning who's like, "What the hell are you supposed to be?" And then that guy's never going to ask that question again. It also tells you what happens if people aren't in the know. They lose all of their teeth, and then they're in the know, and all of their friends are in the know.
Literally. And I just thought that was brilliant. I just think the fact that like this is the type of Batman that I can envision in a later film retiring, coming back, and then saying like, "Are criminals still cowardly and superstitious?"
Yeah.
Like, I really want to hear that line. I think that would be amazing.
So they really nail the fear, but the reason why I love how they nail the fear, it's not just cool, which it is. It's so linked into the thematic, the thematic through line of this film. I can't remember. I think it's Batman Genesis, I want to say, is the comic book. I might be completely getting the name wrong. There is a Batman comic book where Superman basically asks Batman why he's changed his costume and why he's got a Robin now, and Batman's response is, "I set out to scare criminals, not children." And that is the entire point of this film, is you see how the people of Gotham are just as terrified of Batman as the criminals. And then at the end of it, I genuinely nearly teared up both times during that end narration, where he's helping the people of Gotham and he's saying, I need to be more, I can't just be fear, I have to be hope as well. That is Batman. And so we're talking about wanting to have the Bat family in Batman. Yeah, do the Bat family with this take on Batman. You've got it. You've got the starting pieces of, he can't just be the darkness and the fear. He has to be the good as well. And the good is people like Alfred and Selina. Those are the people who make him good in this film. Next film, make it Dick Grayson. And then go on from there, sort of thing. It would be so good.
I'd say less Selina.
No, I think she's the part, maybe not the good per se, but the human side. Because
the human side definitely, but I mean, when she was holding that gun up to that cop's head, I was like, definitely not good.
but you could almost imagine a younger, angrier Bruce doing that before realizing that's not the way. I mean, case in point, in the Nolan films, Bruce goes to Joe Chill's trial with a gun because he hasn't worked out what he is yet. No, the other thing I love is the Batman in this is not great. He's not a great person, and what I mean by that is he's very judgmental of people. And there's the line about rich, white, privileged assholes, which some people seem to be really, really mad about that line. I'm fine with it. It feels natural because people do talk like that these days. And, frankly, there are a lot of white, privileged assholes in Gotham. But Bruce is actually one of them. And you've got moments like when Gordon's reacting to the commissioner's death, who was the commissioner used to be Gordon's partner. And I can't remember what Batman says, but he says something, and Gordon says, "You almost sound like you think he deserved it." And Batman responds, "He was a cop across the line." Like, that's just his judgment calls. Oh, you were a corrupt cop. You deserve what you get. I don't care that you've died anymore because you're a corrupt cop. He makes a judgment that Selina is a drug dealer and a thief. And then he gets to know her and goes, "Oh, well, it's a bit more you're surviving. That's what you're doing. You don't have all the things that I have. You're just making do in Gotham." And I think he starts to realize that his worldview is incredibly simplistic, incredibly black and white. And then there's things like him not knowing that the murder weapons are Tucker, because why would he know that? He's a fucking billionaire. It's just those little things, like he's so imperfect in this film, but he's learning. He's getting better. You can totally see a more compassionate Bruce Wayne come out at the end. And so the next film, and this is why I really hope they do Mr. Freeze, is that if they do Mr. Freeze in like the Nora storyline, I feel like a lot of Batmans that we've seen on screen, if they went up against Mr. Freeze, their response would be to pummel him until he's a bleeding pulp. Like even the nicer Batman would still be like, "Oh, you're a supervillain. That's what I do, is I break you." And this one, I really hope that if they do Mr. Freeze, he tries to help Mr. Freeze, and it's a tragedy. And okay, he probably will end up having to punch him and put him in Arkham. But like, that shouldn't be his first response, and that also shouldn't be his. He should always be trying to help characters like Mr. Freeze rather than. And so like there's so much potential to continue this thread of this more compassionate, this more flawed Batman. And so, the Bat family is literally perfect to tap into that potential as well. Although I really hope that the kid in this film is not going to be the future Robin.
I think also, like, to reinforce that point, I think Selina and Bruce are standing on one of the rooftops, and she says something like, "Oh, you just assume the worst in everyone. Maybe we're more alike, blah, blah, blah." And I think they do that well as well, because he's a very angry Bruce, and he acts on his anger like after the judgments. So, like, for example, you said that Selena was just a thief and a drug dealer, and then he kind of like thinks about it and he's like, oh, she's just struggling, blah blah blah. But then once he kind of let that guard down again, once he found out that she had a relationship with Falcone, he immediately started getting like escalating the situation and getting angry again, even to the point that he was going to act on it outside of the funeral when he thought that Selena was with Falcone.
Side note with that, by the way, I love that they had Zoe Kravitz on set for that, because that was one of the major leaks, was the behind the scenes of that, like photos from that set. They had her in that exact costume, so everyone thought that was actually Catwoman, and then it's not. It's just such a good twist. And they clearly were like, there's going to be, we're filming in public in Glasgow, people are clearly going to see, let's get Zoe Kravitz on set. Let's actually get people to see her. But yeah, sorry.
Also, just while I'm on the subject, I think it's a bit fucked up that Falcone was clearly just like so interested in Selena just as a beautiful woman, only to find out that she was scared. That's so fucked up.
I don't think he knew, to be fair, but
no, I know he didn't know, but even still, like it's just so like, it's kind of gross to think that Selena was like even pretending to. But anyway,
but she be surviving.
Yeah. But even the fact that he was going to act on that, and then
case in point as well, though, like when he finds out that Falcone maybe got asked by Thomas Wayne to deal with the reporter, he immediately goes and attacks fucking Alfred. Not physically attacks, but verbally attacks Alfred while Alfred's in his hospital. I love the relationship that he has with Alfred in this film. Some people, this is one of those things that some people are really going to dislike because he's so hostile to Alfred. But like that really again encapsulates how broken and how flawed this Bruce Wayne is. That like he's a shitbag to Alfred frequently, and so I really hope to like see more of Alfred in the future, where the relationship becomes better and sweeter, and you kind of get into that in this film. But.
Yeah, I think so. But I thought that was like so good how they actually did all that, and you can kind of see him like evolving throughout the film, like actually kind of taking a step back and being like, fucking out, I'm just making all these judgment calls and like all my assumptions are just pretty much wrong.
He also does it. He also does it to Gordon in the GCPD when he thinks that Gordon might have been betrayed him to the rest of the cops, and he says the line like, "You too, I have to go through you," or something like that. And it's like, so he's constantly making these judgment calls, and it's great. But yeah, so like. I think what they really nailed, and again, I don't want to criticize the Nolan films, but they're the other films that started with Batman very early in his career, because Tim Burton's Batman has been Batman for a couple of years at that point, I believe. I'm not 100% sure on that because I haven't watched those films in a while, and then obviously Ben Affleck's one's been Batman for donkey's years at that point. But I think one of the things as well, and the Nolan trilogy, you don't know how much time Batman Begins covers from when Bruce gets back to Gotham to the end of that film. So it could be months and months and months. But he kind of works out everything to do with being Batman fairly quickly.
I think it's 7 years.
From when he gets back to Gotham to when he's the end of Batman Begins.
Oh, when he gets... Oh, no.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean... When he... No, I mean from when he gets back to Gotham with Alfred, and he's like, I need to become the Batman, and then to the end of the film,
I'm not sure
how much time is supposed to elapse, but like he pretty quickly goes like, I got the suit, I got the gadgets, Alfred's on board, I got the Batcave, I'm getting Gordon on board. Like he's quite quickly working it. I've got the Playboy persona on. He's quite quickly working everything out, and that's not a problem. I don't think that's bad, and it's a very kind of like Batman Begins is kind of the archetype for origin stories now. But I love that this is a Batman in his second year, and he still hasn't worked stuff out. Like he's still making mistakes as Batman. He's still not got a very good relationship with Alfred. He's still got a bit of a frayed relationship with Gordon, although it's a pretty good relationship with Gordon, but it's still like a little bit on the rocks. He hasn't got the glider yet. He's building the Batmobile, and like he takes it out for the first time in this film. Like he's really a Batman in progress, and that means that if they're going to do more films, and again, I really hope they do more than a trilogy, although take it a film at a time, make a really good sequel, and then go from there. But like, if everyone's on board, please do loads of films of this character, because there's so much chance for this character to grow and like really change over the films. So yeah, because he already changed so much in this film as well, which is just like he's the most arc that Batman's ever had in a film, which is just But I think
Robert Pattinson is still like young, so he could go for like.
He was also asked in an interview how many films he could see himself doing, and he said something along the lines of, I mean, this was a lot. Let's make a sequel, sort of thing. So he didn't give anything away, but his reaction kind of was like, I'm down, sort of thing, but also not wanting to say, like, let's do another 10 or whatever. But, like, he does seem very hype at the very least to do another film. But also he has said that this was a pretty grueling film. It was about 180-day shoot, so a very long shoot during COVID, and obviously like very physically demanding. But he still seems very on board. So I hope that they do more. And particularly if you do want to do the Bat family, potentially by the 6th Batman film, he can basically be on the sidelines.
Yeah, just have a decent Nightwing for once. I mean, that would be pretty fucking sick, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, like if you had Nightwing, Red Hood, and Tim Drake Robin, and like did something like the Nightfall storyline where that's where Bruce gets his back broken, right? Nightfall, yeah. Do something like that where then you got like 50-year-old Robert Pattinson, like I'm too old for this shit. Cool, have him be too old for this shit and too broken for this shit, and have the Bat family take center stage. That would be cool. But like so. Hopefully they do more, but as long as they've got story stuff to tell. But like I think this is where I come down with any superhero franchise, and it's where I come down with Spider-Man as well at the moment. Is like I love No Way Home, and we're probably going to get more Spider-Man films with Tom Holland. But at the same time, if that was the last film we saw with Tom Holland as Spider-Man, great finale, but because you only had a trilogy of films to really like do that character plus the extra appearances he had, you don't get to see the full growth that you get to see with decades of comic books, which you're never going to get fully with film. But like there's so much that these characters have gone through and changed that the films never really tap into because they're limited by how many films the filmmakers and the actors want to do. So yeah.
And also if the production companies still want to pay out to make them. This
is true. Although this film apparently not like cheap by any means, but on the cheaper side of superhero flicks. I can't remember the exact budget, but it was, considering how good it looks, nowhere near the budget of things like Avengers or Spider-Man or anything like that. I think it's the same budget as Black Widow, I heard somewhere. And it definitely got more bang for its buck than Black Widow, let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
What did you think about things like the fighting style in the film, the action? How did you feel about that?
Oh, there is 3 scenes that stand out to me. Well, there was, but I'm trying to struggle to come up with a third right now. But there was one scene in particular that I was like, oh my god, this is like something straight out of fucking the Arkham games. And it was when he was fighting the Riddler's goons on all the stuff up there.
Yeah.
And he goes up, grapples 2 of their legs, jumps off backwards, swings round, and leaves them hanging. I'm like, that was fucking mental.
I've been playing the Batman games recently, so I've started with Arkham Origins, and I used to use basically just Batarangs as my gadget in combat, because I don't usually use a lot of gadgets. I was like, I should start using the Backlaw. Backlaw's so good to use in combat, man. Like, oh, someone's a little bit far away, yank, bang. Like, it's always the same move, so it's a bit boring, but like, I've been inspired by the Batman to use the Backlaw combatively, but
yeah, I thought that scene was just fucking amazing. I was out on the edge of my seat when I saw that. I was just like, oh my god, this is exactly the type of action I want in a Batman film.
I also really hope they do subtle things. So one of the things I really like with Iron Man in the MCU is that you can actually see, and I remember reading this article where someone's like, look at all the things that go wrong for Iron Man and how he stops that from going wrong in a sequel. So an example is when he's fighting, what's his name?
Obadiah Stane?
No, the guy in Iron Man 2, I've forgotten his name. Whiplash?
Oh, Whiplash.
Yeah. He's fighting Whiplash and like his suit gets completely destroyed by the electricity, right? Avengers, his next appearance, he gets hit by Thor's lightning and it charges up his suit. The implication being that he went, can't have that happen to me again, and improved his suits so that wouldn't happen again. And you can see that loads of times in Avengers. So again, in Infinity War, he has a shield made out of nanotech. It gets destroyed and it uses up his nanotech by doing that. In Endgame, he has a plasma shield or an energy shield or whatever. So he's replaced it with a more practical thing. And so someone was like, it would be really cool if, and they don't have to say it, but if he starts using smoke bombs in the next film, because he was like, hey, that fire extinguisher thing worked pretty well for me. And so like incorporates that into his arsenal.
That would be sick.
So yeah.
I was thinking of in the first movie when he was fighting Obadiah Stade or Ironmonger, and he takes him up into the atmosphere and the suit freezes over.
And then in Avengers, he flies into a literal like black hole void in space. Yeah. No, I mean, exactly the same sort of concept. So yeah, and obviously like there's other room for that. Like he can improve his glider, for instance, quite a bit.
when he pulled that whole thing out and it like inflated, I was like, oh my god, like that's just impractical. You need to change it up, my dude.
But at the same time, it's based in reality where flying squirrel suits are totally real. So it's like taking the practical route. But some people have been like, fucking Matt Reeves not willing to do the comic booky stuff of like a gliding cape. I don't think it's him not willing to do it. It's him showing that this is Batman in his learning phase. He hasn't designed the cape cloak glider thing. He's got a flying squirrel suit instead, and he will improve that. Another example is of him taking comic booky things. Was that Venom in the final fight that he injected himself with?
That's what I thought, but I don't think so. I think it was probably just adrenaline.
See, that's the debate. Is it adrenaline? Is it Venom? And people pointed out that some adrenaline is green. I think it's Venom. It's like a neon green, and he goes into a fucking rage. I don't think it's like necessarily the exact same Venom that we'll see Bane use later on, but I think that's a little hint to it. And that maybe at some point, if we get to see a Bane in this universe, they will like get access to whatever Batman's developed and improve it or something. There's also a comic book run where Batman gets addicted to Venom, so like it's got precedent in the comics as well. But like that sort of thing, if that is supposed to be Venom, that feels like they're embracing the comic booky stuff but doing it in a kind of grounded way. So I think that the glider suit is very much supposed to be a prototype. And I love how he's terrified when he gets to the top of the roof. Like he's like, oh fuck. Yeah, and then he's just like, I've got to do it, sort of thing. I love how the Batmobile stalls the first time he starts up. Like the Batmobile has as good an entrance as Batman, and then it fucking stalls, and that gives Penguin an opportunity to start getting away. And it's like, the first time I was like, did that fucking stall? And then I watched it the second time, I was like, that fucking stall, that's so fucking cool. Yeah. Like, yeah, I love all of that. It's so good.
Yeah, when the Batman engine revs up and like all the lights are going off, and like you see the booster at the back. That was another one of the moments that stood out for me. That was part of my top 3. Still really struggling to come up with what the third one was, but I'll get there, I promise.
Was it the corridor fight scene where he's like just getting gunned at?
No.
Was it the fight scene in the nightclub before that?
I don't think it was a fight scene.
Okay.
I think it was another moment, but I for the life of me, I just cannot remember it at the moment.
Fair. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, I think the action's really good. And again, he's not like, I've seen some people, probably Snyder fans, and I don't want to harp on Snyder fans. If you like the Snyder films, go for it. That's fine. I'm happy that you enjoy them. They don't do it for me. And people have been saying like, oh, this isn't our Batman, and then showing the warehouse fight scene from Batman vs Superman. Yeah, it's a very cool fight scene. Unfortunately, he murders a bunch of people, and that's not Batman at all. But you know,
it's your prerogative to have bad taste.
I mean, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say if you like that, you like that. I would personally find it much more enjoyable if he didn't fucking murder people in that scene. But it has got some decent choreography in it. But I actually love the fact that he's getting hit in this film. Like, he gets hit in the back of the head. At one point, 2 of the guys, when he's fighting in the rafters, they grab his cloak and start dragging him by his cloak. And then he does this cool spin
point fucking blank in the chest with a fucking shotgun and gets blown the fuck back.
Yeah, and like nearly dies because of it. And Selena has to say, like, it's great that this is a Batman who's still, I feel like I keep on making this point, but he's still he's still figuring it out. He's not infallible, and it's great. It's just fucking great.
And also, I'd like to just go back to the comment I made a moment ago about Snyder fans. I personally really enjoyed the warehouse scene. After I'd gotten over the fact that Batman killed in that movie, I was like, okay, that is a fucking sick scene. Probably the only good one in the movie.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, if Ben Affleck was playing Red Hood, be a pretty cool scene. But Batman should not kill people, and he also shouldn't have his mind changed because Superman's mum has the same. Yeah. I was actually thinking when you were talking about Robin and how great Robin is at like peeling back Batman and bringing him back from the light. I know it would have come out of left field, but it would have been really cool if a Robin, whichever Robin it was, maybe Nightwing, maybe Red Hood, had actually shown up during that fight and bit like he'd heard that Batman and Superman were going at it, and he's the one that stops Batman from killing Superman. That would have been fucking cool. But you'd have had to have like done it very, very well, because otherwise it would have been like, who the fuck is this guy, sort of thing. But like that could have worked. But yeah,
I mean, it could have been. Yeah, what they could have done is they didn't necessarily have had to have had the Joker kill a Robin, but kind of go down the Barbara Gordon path of having him just beaten to an absolute fucking pulp and like disabled or something, and then have him come in.
Show in the Batcave that Batman had been working on the powered armor for a bit and had some prototypes, and then have a like Jason Todd Red Hood show up with like powered legs or something. So he's got like half the suit on. Sick. So like it's implied that that would have been cool.
Yeah, and
like,
that could have
show Jason Todd in like a wheelchair. Oh, it could have been Barbara. Like show a Bat family member in a wheelchair earlier on, and like that's Batman's failure, and then later on they show up in half of the power. Yeah, that would have been cool. We've just fixed your film, Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that egotistical, but that would have been cool. I would have been down for that.
So when are we going to write like a superhero film and, actually make something really good? Because
first of all, we need to write our short film about the history of dick pics.
Yes, we do need to do that. I still think that's a sick idea, and we do need to get around to doing that.
Yeah. I also love things like the way they deal with the death of the Waynes is so well done in this film, because you don't see it, and they were very adamant that they weren't going to show it because it's been done loads of times and done really, really well loads of times. But it's seen so much in this film. Like, obviously the very obvious example is when he sees the mayor's son, and like the mayor's son shows up 3 times in the film, and each time it's like a very important moment for the character. I really hope the mayor's son doesn't become a Robin, because that would be, I feel like, a bit cheap. But like it's a really cool way of like showing exactly what Batman and Bruce is thinking. But also you just see it in so many other moments, like his just everything about how he carries himself, the distance he has from people, the fact that he's like this silent figure when he's around the cops, like, he's just walking around the crime scenes, not talking to anyone other than Gordon. It's just like he's so disconnected from everyone. And again, that's a brilliant way to get him to connect with people, is have him build a relationship with Alfred and bring in a Robin. But yeah, like it's so good.
Just while I'm thinking about it, I want to go back to what I said about Selina not being Catwoman, or me disputing that. There are 2 moments in the movie where I would dispute that, because she literally says the bat and the cat.
Yes.
And also she says like she has 9 lives.
Yes.
I mean, to me, she's pretty clearly in that role already.
Yeah, no, she's a cat burglar, and she's clearly got a thing with cats, and she might even go by Catwoman at this point. But like the point I think that Zoe Kravitz was saying is that she's not fully the Catwoman from the comics, who is like this like very kind of, I don't quite know how to describe Catwoman, but like this is not quite that. This is an early days Catwoman. This is an early day Riddler. This is an early day Penguin. Colin Farrell's Oswald Cobblepot is called the Penguin in this film, but he's not the Penguin as in like the crime lord yet. He's he's an underling, and he doesn't like he hasn't embraced that he's the Penguin yet. I would really love to see. I know it's not from the comics, but in the Arkham games that he has his monocle because a bottle got shoved through his eye.
Yeah.
I would love it if they took that route. Like, that would be such a cool way to introduce the monocle to the character.
I feel like they're not gonna give him the sort of top hat and suit and monocle and umbrella, but like
I feel like they probably won't do the top hat. I could see them doing the umbrella and like the overcoat and stuff with like the feathers.
I need the umbrella. I don't care about the monocle or anything else. Just give me the fucking umbrella. That's all I want.
In the Batman 2, he goes, "There was one time I got arrested outside the Iceberg Lounge and it was raining. I ain't gonna let myself get wet ever again, so I bought myself this." And he like whips out an umbrella. There's also like I've seen some, and again, this film's not gonna be for everyone. It's nearly 3 hours long. It's quite long, and it's a slow burner. I wouldn't say it's. Some people said it's slow paced. I wouldn't say it's slow paced. It's a slow burner. It's a detective story, but that does mean that some people are gonna strain to hold attention for that whole film. But so I'm totally fine with people criticizing it. For me, love it, 10 out of 10. But for other people, if it's like a 6 out of 10 or whatever, fine, that's fine. I kind of like the fact that it's not a general crowd pleaser and it's going for a very particular take on that character. But there are some people who said that this film is not funny. And that to me is crazy talk. This film has got some great jokes in it. They're subtle, but it's got some great like both visual gags and joke retorts. You've got when Penguin is tied up and Gordon and Batman go off to get the next clue, and he goes, "Hey, what about me?" And he waddles off because he's tied with his hands and feet, so he looks like a penguin. That's great. When Batman fucking fucks up the glide, that's fucking great. Those are funny moments. And as I say, Batman is funny in this film. He's like got this sarcastic humor occasionally with things like I don't know what the role is with the new head of the police, who's not the commissioner yet, I don't think, but the guy who is under the commissioner. When Batman is like in the GCPD and they're trying to unmask him or whatever, and he like attacks a bunch of officers, and then they try and grab his mask again. And he punches one of them, and then the guy goes, "Now I got you on assaulting an officer," and he goes, "You got me on assaulting 3." Like, he's funny. Yeah. Or when he first goes into the Iceberg Lounge and the twin brothers come out, and one of them goes, "Hey, you should like piss off or you'll get blood in your suit," and he goes, "Mine or yours." Like, he's funny in this film. I love that as well. But yeah, for some reason, I guess because it's not as quippy as like Marvel films, some people just haven't picked up on it because it's very naturalistic and dry humor. But yeah, this film...
I mean, I think if you're going into a Batman film, especially one that was marketed as being such a, dark and gritty type noir film, I think if you're going into that type of film hoping that it's going to be fucking a bucket of laughs every 2 seconds, I think you're the one
with the problem.
Yeah, I didn't expect that at all, and it didn't deliver that, and I wasn't fazed by it at all. Like, I just thought this is a great... Like, it just felt focused to me. Like,
that's the thing, is there's the MCU, and I don't want to sound like I'm criticizing the MCU a lot because I love the MCU, but the MCU does have a problem where it's very funny and a lot of its jokes are genuinely funny, but it does sometimes have a fear of committing to the drama a bit and undercuts it with humor. And that doesn't serve the drama, doesn't serve the plot. And also the humor isn't very naturalistic. It's very quippy, which is fine. It's a comic book movie. Like, comic books are larger than life, so it's fine to have quippy humor. That's not a problem. But when it's detracting from the overall experience, that then becomes a problem. And I think it's gotten better recently, to be fair. I didn't notice... I've only seen No Way Home once, but I didn't notice it particularly in No Way Home at any, like, crucial moment. Like, spoilers for No Way Home. When a certain character dies, that's what I'm going to say, there isn't any jokes for like a solid 5 minutes, and then it becomes quite funny when 2 Spider-Men show up. But like, it doesn't undercut it there. But like those films have had those problems before, and so this film doesn't have that humor at all. It doesn't detract from the direction of the film ever because it's all so naturalistic and quite subtle at times. But it has got jokes in it. It has got levity in it. So, I mean, and it's not that Batman hasn't had that before. I mean, I'm not wearing hockey pads is a funny line.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. Also, I like that the Riddler's got a sense of humor right out of the gate with thumb drive. That was good.
Yeah. Yeah, I did enjoy his riddles. I thought they were. I think I was reading a comment about the Riddler earlier.
Mm.
Basically saying the problem with the Riddler. In fact, there's a comment on like a parody of I don't really know what it was from, but
Oh, is this
it
the like
was
Funny or Die where it's like the Riddler is like doing riddles for Batman and he keeps on just completely getting them wrong? Is it that one?
no,
Okay.
it was just like a sort of independent sort of channel, and it was like the Riddler just sort of gives like a riddle about, I have like rivers and blah blah blah, but I don't have this. And then the answer was like a map. But instead of Batman just working it out, he just whips out his phone and starts Googling the answers.
That's
And
good.
yeah, and it does it and he does it a couple of times, and the Riddler's like, did you just Google that? And the Batman's like, I no. And the Riddler is like, this is like kind of my whole deal. I don't have any friends. This is like my one social interaction I have a month, and you're kind of like ruining this for me. And the like, I can't remember what the video is called, but like you should go and check it out. It's very funny, and he does a bunch of other videos like this. But yeah, and someone commented on that video saying like the problem with the Riddler is he's a great villain when he's written well, but it's difficult to write well because he only works as a character if they can actually write unique and like riddles that aren't just going to be solved instantly, because it actually has to put Batman's mind to a test.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that this film did very well, is that you couldn't instantly just be like, oh, that's what he means, clearly.
But it's interesting you say that, because I have seen some people criticize this film, not just for the riddles, but just in general the mystery, because they've gone, oh, I wasn't really able to work it out because Batman does it too quickly. Like Batman just finds the clues, and Batman. I was like, I get that.
That's the whole fucking point.
Well, no, I do get where that criticism is coming from, because something like watching Knives Out or just a murder mystery in general, one of the joys of doing that is that you are working out the mystery as you go, and you're trying to work out who the killer is and all of that. But this film isn't that. So that's why I'm okay with it. I do think it could be fun to have a Batman story where you're trying to work it out with Batman, but you know who the killer is. They tell you who the killer is in the very first scene of the film, so you're not trying to work out who the killer is. You are trying to work out why, but like, it didn't detract from my enjoyment the fact that Batman is working out things quickly, because that is showing his intellect. At the same time, yes, it would be fun to have like a detective film or show where Batman is there, but you're also getting to figure it out, because a lot of like Sherlock Holmes stories, you get to work it out with Sherlock Holmes. But I don't think that this is worse off because of that. It's a preference thing. But
I mean, yeah, I think from my perspective, I'm like, well, I don't want to be able to work it out almost, because like Batman is meant to be the greatest detective, and it's like, well, if I can work it out, it's not really saying much about Batman, is it?
I did work out the first one, but that's because it was in the trailer, and I worked it out when the trailer came out. I didn't work it out as quickly as Batman did, but I did work it out on my own, which is the first one is what does a liar do when they're dead? He lies still. So I worked that one out. I also guessed the what's black and blue and dead all over one. I was like, is that supposed to be Batman? But like, I didn't get what it was, and then in the film he's like, if you try and stop this. I was like, oh, got it. Because he's not, I was like, I guess it's supposed to be Batman, but Batman's not like dead unless you mean like metaphorically dead all over, because he's like emotionally
he doesn't
dead.
have much blue.
But he does in the comic books. Maybe the blue's bruises. But yeah, so
Maybe
I was
the
like,
Riddler read the comics.
so I guessed the answer, but I didn't like understand why. I was like, I'm pretty sure it's Batman, but I don't get why until the film came out. But
But if I'm working out as quick as Batman, then I should have a beautiful career ahead of me. But as it stands, I don't. So
yeah.
I'll
Also,
leave that to Batsy.
fun thing you said about the sketch where he's like Googling it. So there is a post-credit scene to this film. It's basically a non-post-credit scene, but there is a question mark and a little bit of a cipher that flashes up that people are translated saying, I think it says something like, you think the story is over, but not everything is done, more is coming, or something like that. We're not done yet. Basically, it's just saying that there's a sequel coming. Again, not officially confirmed by Warner Bros. yet, I don't think. But it also has this question mark, and it flashes up with elratolada.com, which is the website that they go to as part of one of the riddles in the film. If you go to that, it gives you 3 riddles per day. If you take too long to answer it, or if you click on another tab, it literally goes, oh, you're trying to get help, are you? And like won't let you answer the riddle until you refresh the page.
That's really cool.
So obviously you can look it up on your phone still, but yeah. So that was a neat little thing. But
well, seeing as we're talking about the Riddler, what was I gonna say earlier? I can't remember now. Fuck.
we were talking about his costume before in
Um.
the non-spoiler section. Just trying to like fish for what you might have been going to say.
Oh fuck! It was just there. What is
With
wrong with my
hard to write
brain?
him?
No. Oh, the point of the film that I thought it was ending was when the Riddler was caught.
Okay, yeah. So I saw some people theorize that might have been when it was going to end, but I didn't. I was like, nah, it's too easy. I knew that there was more coming.
I mean, I thought there was going to be more coming, but like, I didn't think it was going to go on for as long as it did.
Fair enough.
Like, when it was revealed that, all the bombs were planted around the city, I was like, oh, so this is going on for like a little while longer, right? Yeah. But yeah, there was another moment as well. I can't really remember what it was, but yeah, I mean, I thought overall the Riddler in general was just really good.
Yeah.
As I was saying at the beginning of this whole, well, it's going to be in the podcast video, not in this video, but in the
so
podcast.
we're doing the non-spoiler stuff in the podcast, and then the spoiler talk's going to be the Roll for Insight. Is that how we're doing it?
Oh, okay. No, let's not do that.
I mean, we can do that, or we could take the non-spoiler stuff and also put that in Roll for Insight, but leave that in the podcast, and then go like, hey, and we went for it. I don't know. I'll work it out, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
we might literally just have in the podcast be like, yeah, we liked it, but we went for 4. Okay, we'll do it now.
Yeah.
We like the bat. No, I'm going to do no. So it's easy for me to notice on the editing software. We liked the Batman, but we talked about the Batman for like another hour, and we'd already been going for a long time. So it's all in Roll for Insight, which will be being uploaded shortly after this podcast. But score out of 10, Alex?
I'll give it a 9.
I'd give it a 10, but I'm a shill for this version of Batman. So
yeah, and I never give anything a 10, so
fair. But yeah, go watch our Roll for Insight. We talked about it a lot. We're still in the middle of talking about it as we're recording this bit because we're trying to work out while we're doing it how this content's going to be released. But at the moment, we're on 3.5 hours of talking about this shit as a whole recording, not just Batman. But yeah, so yeah. Thanks. Back to Roll for Insight.
yeah. So, oh fuck, what was I saying? My brain is not with it today. Oh yeah. So going back to what I said in the previous bit, I the whole costume thing, it didn't detract away from the character much for me at all. But what I said about him being sort of more narcissistic and wanting people to kind of know who he is because he's like proud of what he does basically. I think they did do that pretty well in this movie anyway, regardless of whatever he looks like, because obviously he had all those followers on the thing and he was broadcasting it, and obviously at the end of it all he did just turn himself in, pretty much. He didn't just try and get away. He just sat down eating some street food,
some pumpkin pie.
Yeah, and I think they handled that bit very well. But I don't know, man. The costume, it doesn't sit right with me.
So here's my pitch for where they could take Riddler going next, because I do think this kind of serves as an origin story for the Riddler as well. But to talk about this, we do need to address an elephant in the room, or in the other room, the cell next door.
The Joker.
The Joker's in this movie. It's been confirmed because for some reason people needed to ask Matt Reeves whether that was the Joker after seeing this film. It's obviously the fucking Joker, and it's fuck, I've blanked on his name. Barry Keoghan is playing the Joker. Now, it's interesting, and we'll get back to. I'll do the Riddler stuff now, and then go back to the Joker, I guess. But the Joker is in this film as a brief like cameo towards the end of the film. But he kind of establishes a relationship with the Riddler, and he says, you know, the less of these you have, the more value they have. And Riddler goes, a friend, and then they both start laughing hysterically in their cells together. My feeling is that if they bring back Riddler, and I don't want them to bring him back next film necessarily, but if they bring him back, he is primed to be more like the Riddler from the comics, because in his interrogation scene with Batman, he's like, I'm going to be remembered forever. And Batman's like, you're a nobody, you're a sick psychopath, and no one's ever going to remember you. You're going to be forgotten. So that's now an excuse for him to take the mask off. He wants people to remember him, and they're not. So he needs to be more public about it. He's friends with the Joker, who is a very theatrical villain. So that's going to bring in some more of the theatrics with it. And also, he now is very narcissistic and doesn't have as much of a crusade against Gotham. His crusade is now going to be to prove that he is smarter and a better person than Batman. So, like, I feel like those 3 points, if they do another Riddler story at some point, which would probably I feel like if they dedicated a whole nother film to Riddler being the main villain, that might be a bit too much, unless they are going to do, like, 10 films for Robert Pattinson. But, like, they could have him be one of several villains in a subsequent story. And I think at that point, he's primed to be basically the comic book version of Riddler, with his green suits and the mask, because he's doing theatrics, showing his face, and really just trying to prove that he's smarter than Batman.
You know what I would love to see in, like, obviously, if we get more Batman films than a trilogy, then, you know, delay it for a little bit, and then it could be really cool once you have a, you know, better gallery of rogues. I would love to see an Arkham Knight-esque story where it's just like all the criminals are just like out, and he has to like try and like divide his time up between them. So maybe not have like so many that it's just like, you know, too crazy. But
I think it might be a bit too soon to do this, but some people have theorized that might be where the sequel goes, because there's a comic book called Batman No Man's Land, which is where Gotham's, I think it's hit by a hurricane or something. It's like cut off from the rest of America, and it's basically a no man's land, and the criminals have carved up Gotham. And with the way this film ends, with it being flooded and cut off from the rest of America, and the National Guard being sent in and everything, you could do that, but I do think it's too early to do that. So if they do it, I'll be fine with it, and that could be an opportunity to introduce a bunch of new rogues, but I would personally prefer if they left that a little bit. But yeah, I mean, that I think doing that sort of thing could work really, really well.
Because I personally love when the Riddler just becomes a nuisance. Like, rather than just like the main villain who's like really diabolical, I love it when he's just a nuisance, just a thorn in Batman's side, just to get under his skin, because he has kind of lost that whole, like, you know, edge of, oh, they don't know who I am, so I can go big, you know. And then he's sort of just he's like, I'm just gonna go for Batman because fuck him.
Some of the comics as well really kind of dig into this idea that the longer Riddler, more so than really any of the other rogues, because he's so narcissistic about his assault on Batman. Like, Joker almost doesn't care whether he wins or loses, for instance, but Riddler does. He's got so much stake in this that there's some stories where Riddler is almost like this pathetic desperate, like vying for Batman's attention, and like, yeah, so exactly that sort of thing of like a nuisance, because Batman's like, you're not worth my time, and that's only going to aggravate him more. So yeah,
and like, I love it when, you know, what I can envision seeing is like maybe in the third film or something, he's like, Batman fights another couple of villains in the second film, and then third film, it's like couple of the bigger villains sort of break out and are doing something just like awful, and Batman's like, on the way to get to somewhere, and then suddenly he's like racing through a street, and then suddenly on one of the big sort of screens in the square, just he just hears the Riddler's voice, literally drawing his attention, and he's just like on this big screen, and he's like, he's maybe captured someone, and he's just basically being that nuisance, and Batman's like, I do not have the fucking time for this, and he's like trying to fight all these different villains, and I think that would be really cool to see.
So you know how like the big poster for this film is Batman in the rain and it's red. And I was talking about like my love of primary color. So do Mr. Freeze, have it be like ice blue. Do Joker at some point, have it be that purple. And at some point do Riddler again and have it be this bright neon green. And the poster is the billboards that we saw in like Gotham Square in this film, but they're all lit up in green with green question marks on them, and it's Batman like standing in the square in rain. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to see something like that.
Trying to think what other villains have like very like particular color schemes. Because I wanted Deathstroke would be orange, I guess. Court of Owls doesn't really have a particular color. I guess white for Court of Owls. But anyways, yeah. But yeah, no, I think that'd be really, really cool. But going back to Joker, so some people don't like Joker's appearance in this film, and I get it. I'm a little bit worn out on Joker. I do understand that you can't really do a Batman take without Joker at all. That's never gonna work. But like, I hope Joker's not the villain in the next film. I kind of hope he's not the villain in the third film. But if you're going to do a bunch of them, have him be the villain eventually, by all means. But Matt Reeves has gone on record and said, this isn't a tease for a sequel, although he acknowledges it kind of feels like that in this film. But actually, it was originally in the film, there was a scene where Batman visits the Joker, and Matt Reeves has confirmed that this is a deleted scene that he will release at some point. He visits Joker in Arkham to try and get into Riddler's head, and he compared it to Will Graham going to visit Hannibal Lecter in Manhunter, and the other stories about Hannibal Lecter, because Clarice also visits Hannibal for the same reason, which is to psychoanalyze the psychopath to then get into the head of another psychopath. And in that scene, this unknown inmate, who is the Joker, would have said, it's coming up to our anniversary or something like that, implying that Batman is the person who put this guy in jail or in the asylum. But also, Matt Reeves has said it's not the Joker yet, it's the person who's going to become the Joker at some point. So he deals with an insane person, and I think I sent you, there's this idea they played around with that this character has a physical deformation that means that he, ever since he was a child, has been forced to just like have this grin on his face, and so he's like gone insane from people bullying him and abusing him because of that. But yeah, so there was this deleted scene where they were going to talk, and then Matt Reeves cut it out of the film because he felt like it slowed the pacing down, and that scene was the purpose of that scene was dealt with elsewhere anyways. And then he also cut out the other scene with the Joker, the one that's in the actual theatrical cut, because he felt like you can't just have that scene without the first scene. That doesn't work. And then when they were doing test audiences, one of the responses they got from test audiences is that they felt like Riddler's story was unresolved because you don't see Riddler again after Batman goes to deal with the rest of his goons. So they put it back in to have that resolution for the Riddler. So that explanation kind of goes, okay, well, you're not sequel baiting, but at the same time, he understands why it kind of is viewed that way. I really like that idea of potentially Joker being this kind of character that Batman visits. And I don't know whether I've said this to you. It was either you or Tommy that I said this to. I would love it if what they did is potentially have Barry Keoghan be in every single film as this inmate who is not Joker yet, but is going to become Joker at some point. And Batman ends up talking to him in every single film, whether it's to get advice or he's in Arkham and this guy calls out to him or whatever. And over the course of several films, this guy starts to work out not who Batman is, but how Batman works, how Batman thinks, how to predict Batman.
You definitely said this to me, because I think I said I said, yeah, he kind of gets to know Batman so well that he becomes his ultimate villain and can become so unpredictable because he literally knows how Batman's mind works and what he will
he does to
assume.
Batman what
And
Batman is
yeah,
trying to do to Joker, which is psychoanalyze him to psychoanalyze
Mm.
other people. So yeah, do that and then have a film like No Man's Land where it's just a bunch of villains break out of Arkham, kind of like Arkham City or to a lesser extent Arkham Knight. Bunch of villains break out of Arkham and Batman isn't worried about Joker because he dealt with Joker years ago, this guy who's not actually Joker yet. And, you know, he's got crazier villains to deal with, whether that's Riddler or Mr. Freeze or whatever. And then Joker just fucks his shit up because it's Joker and he's become fully Joker. That would be really cool. But
also, I gotta say, I loved the Joker's first line. What is it they say? One moment you're on top of the world, the next you're a clown.
do people say that?
I don't know, but I liked it when he said it.
They've also talked a little bit about the makeup. You don't see any of his face really, you just kind of see the silhouette, and there's like definitely something going on with his face, although Matt Reeves going to refer to it as being like this version of Joker hasn't fallen into acid or anything, so maybe it's not acid burns, although it could be. I did jokingly say to Tommy, maybe this Joker's origin story is he was the truck driver who got his truck blown up because of Penguin, and that's why he's got burns on his face. But also some people have gone like maybe it's Death of the Family style, where he's literally carved off his own face and is wearing it as a mask, which would be fucked up. But apparently the makeup design is very much based on I can't remember the film, but there's a silent film that inspired the Joker's design, and it's like this like grinning clown face. And you can look it up online. You just search like Joker inspiration, but that's basically going back to that original inspiration as the makeup inspiration for this version, which is cool. But yeah, I don't mind it, but I do understand why people do dislike it, and I do hope that they don't use Joker for a while. But I do think Barry Keoghan can be a really good Joker, and as I say, I understand you can't really do Batman without Joker, but just do plenty of Batman films and then I'll be fine with you redoing Joker.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
I think that's basically everything I want to say about it. I loved it. Loved every minute of it. I loved it more on a second watch, and I already loved it shitloads the first time. And I've realised that I haven't been using my discount that I get on Odeon cinema tickets through work. I get them for half price, it turns out, and I haven't been using that for the last 3 years. So I'm tempted to go see it again for £5.80 instead. But
I have a couple bits more.
Okay. I have one more thing I want to do, but it's the last thing I want to do, which is my pitch for the sequel. So
right. So yeah, before I said there was one point in the film where I thought the acting was a little bit iffy. And I feel like you're going to disagree, and that you're probably going to think I'm mad for saying this. So I'm going to preface this by saying I think Jeffrey Wright killed it in the role as Gordon. However, there was one scene, I think it was when, like, it was literally at the very beginning of when they're interrogating Penguin, and he was like shouting at him, and I was like, oh, I feel like that was a bit of overacting. And I was like, that was kind of cringy the way he just shouted that. But that was literally the one moment, and I was like, I mean, he's done so well, you know, it's a slip up, but like they definitely could have done a different take of that.
Fair enough. I think the rationale behind that is that it's supposed to be his ex-partner who's the guy who got eaten by the rats. So like that would fuck him up a bit. And I also don't mind the idea of Gordon being a little bit unhinged, just because if you're the first cop in the force to work with the fucking Batman, something ain't right. Like, like I get when more people start working with the Batman and he starts being a like normal thing in Gotham, then I understand people being all right with him. But if you're like, if you know, let's take the Batman Begins scenario of Batman showing up in your office and being like, I'm Batman, now it too, blah, 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 and then showing up again in a full bat suit and you're still working with him, there's something a little bit off there. And I'm not saying I don't believe that Gary Oldman's Commissioner Gordon would do that, but I'm just saying I could believe that person would get a bit unhinged during an interrogation if they're willing to work with the Batman. So
I don't know. It was just the way like his face look and like the way he delivered it. It just didn't quite match up with each other, and I was like, oh,
fair enough. I did see someone say that. You know the scene when, again, in the interrogation room when he's trying to get Batman out, and he's like, "If you punch me in the face, then they won't know that." And he's doing that whole thing. Yeah. People have been like, "Is that Jeffrey Wright's Gordon trying to like compete with Batman for who can do the coolest voice?" I know it's both of them whispering and trying to make it look like they're having a very intense argument, but I just love that idea of him just like becoming more like Batman, where he's like, "Oh, this guy's got such a cool voice. If you punch me in the face." Also, Jeffrey Wright voiced Batman in an audio novel, so like, but yeah, no, I will also say it's tough for me because I fucking love Gary Oldman as Commissioner Gordon, and I like in concept J.K. Simmons as Gordon, but I do think Jeffrey Wright slightly edges it out for me personally. But like, I think it's mainly just because we get so much more of him and him working with Batman. I don't necessarily think he's better in any other way, but just like the amount of Gordon content we got is just really, really good.
The only other like small thing that I picked up on, and that I thought at the time when I was watching it, was when he's just been saved by Selina, and I think Gordon's up there as well, and Batman like, you know, sees the people in the water and whatever, and he like the action music starts up and he like jumps onto the electrical cable, and then it kind of goes like slow-mo and he like growls and he like cuts the thing, and then he just falls into the water and everyone's like looking over, and then he just comes up and goes about his business, and I was like, what the fuck was that about? Like, you just made it look like he was gonna die or something, but then you just didn't like show any reactions after that. Like, you just got up and everything was fine. I was like, that was just so weird.
I do get where you're coming from. I think it's mostly the shot that makes it weird. That like the slow-mo scream as he cuts the wire. I think on because I definitely felt it was a bit weird on the first watch. On the second watch, I think what it is it's a mixture of things. I think first of all, the reason why you see him scream, I get the vibe that this Batman's scared of heights. And like he's actually like, he thinks he might die when he's doing this, so that's why he's like giving out a scream, is like to psych himself up, which maybe we don't need to see. And again, the shot's a little bit awkward. But the whole falling into the water thing, I think, is supposed to be symbolic, because he literally then resubmerges from the water as the new Batman, the Batman who is a hero, not just vengeance. And it's kind of like a baptism. So I think that's the point of it more than anything else, is that he is baptized in the floodwater, which, you know,
I mean,
I was raised Catholic, so I might pick up on that where other people might not pick up on that.
I definitely wouldn't see it that way. Now that you've mentioned it, I can kind of.
And then he literally leads the people with light. It's quite a lot of Christian imagery in that fight a little bit there, but
yeah, I didn't get that. I was just like, that was just super weird,
but yeah, I will say that on a first take, it immediately like grabbed me again when he started helping the people. Like I was immediately like back in it, but it did take me out the first time I watched it, of just like, as I say, I think it's just the shot choice of like making it feel overly dramatic, but on a second watch I'm like, okay, there's symbolism here that I didn't pick up on a first watch. So, but literally from the moment he starts helping the people to when something in the way comes in, it's just, that's literally, that is perfect Batman to me. Because you think back on previous Batman, I genuinely struggle to think of any time that Batman has saved people that isn't just like outright stopping criminals at the same time. So obviously, like, he saves the hostages in Dark Knight, but he's stopping Joker and Joker's men at the same time, so he's doing both. This is the first time I can think of in a Batman film where Batman just saves people. Okay, he has dealt with the villains already, but like, you see him helping people and looking after people and being that symbol, and it's just like, it's just, I set out to scare criminals, not scare children. It's just, yeah, it's perfect. I will say there was one thing that I picked up on And it's it's nearly 3 hour movie, so I'm very much willing to forgive this. But there are a couple of moments in the film where I'm like, ooh, that felt like a weird transition from one scene to another. It feels like maybe there was a scene cut there, which was probably cut for pacing, but like it. So the first one that I noticed is when Bruce wakes up in the morning in Wayne Tower, and like he's talking to Alfred, and Alfred's like, yeah, I'm doing the cipher. Also the Wayne board's here to speak to you. Like the maid comes in, it's like the Wayne board's here to speak to you, and Alfred's like, see them in, and then it just cuts them back in the Batcave working on the cipher again. I'm like, feel like we were supposed to get a little scene with a little bit of insight to how Bruce is around the Wayne Corp stuff, but we didn't. And again, it's nearly 3 hours, so we don't, that scene was probably cut because we don't need it. But then the cut to the next scene felt like, ooh, that was a little bit not the smoothest. The other one that I noticed was I can't remember exactly how it transitions to it, but the first scene where he's with Selena and like putting the contact lenses in and whatever, the transition from whatever the scene was before that to that scene was again a little just like, yeah. And I think there's one other time, but again, like this is like really nitpicky stuff that I think I have only noticed because I've studied film and I'm acutely aware of those sorts of things in a way that other viewers hopefully are not. So hopefully other people didn't pick up on that. I don't know, you obviously studied film and media. Did you notice anything like that at all in the film, or?
Not really.
Fair enough. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's a long-ass film. You can be forgiven for cutting out some scenes to make it not as long-ass as it is. So
yeah, I mean, obviously, as I said, the only really real instance of that was when I thought it was going to end and then didn't. Like it felt to me like they added extra on to the end of the film.
Did you think it was going to end when Batman said to Gordon, I think the Batman is coming to an end? Did you go, that's him telling me that the film's coming to an end?
No.
Because that is just before they catch, or is that just after they catch Riddler? I can't remember which. Yeah, it's around about then that he says it, because it's when he's looking at the board and he like thinks that Riddler thinks that Batman is Bruce Wayne. Which I know I sent you as well. There are so many people on the internet who think that Riddler thinks that Batman is Bruce Wayne. No. The film goes out of its way to bait you into thinking that, and then goes out of its way to confirm that he has no idea that Batman is Bruce Wayne. Like, I don't get how you read that so wrong.
On that, I think it was the same Riddler video that I was talking about, but someone was saying in the comments that one of their like favorite scenes with Batman and the Riddler in one of the comics, I think it is the Riddler has basically won. And like he's got Batman pretty much dead to rights. He's done everything, and like, yeah, Batman can't really do much else. But the Riddler's figured out that he's Bruce Wayne, and like at this point, a few other villains have already figured that out, and like he uses that as his like big sort of like coup de grace at the end. He's like, Bruce Wayne, and then Batman just says something like, you're not the first one to figure that out. And it just like absolutely makes Riddler self-destruct because he just can't handle the thought that people other than himself could have worked this out before him. And like that causes him to lose because he is that narcissistic. And I think that would be really cool to see in film.
I've not read that comic, although that sounds awesome, but that reminds me of, I think it might be the Guardian Devil story of Daredevil. It's one of the times when Daredevil comes back after like a soft reboot of the Marvel universe, and in it it's the one where Karen Page gets killed by Bullseye and everything, and basically the person who's manipulating everything is Mysterio, and at the end of it, Daredevil like basically says like Mysterio's basically won, and Daredevil basically does the exact same thing where he's like, well, okay, but you haven't broken me. Meanwhile, you're this pathetic, sniveling piece of shit. Basically, I can't remember the exact context, but I'm pretty sure he tells Mysterio that Mysterio should go kill himself. and then just gets up and leaves. And I was like, ooh, okay. Like, yeah. And it's the same thing because Mysterio is so narcissistic and yeah, so but yeah. So my pitch for the sequel, which is not just mine, I've seen other people make very similar pitches. And this is going against everything I've said of like wanting to spend films and get to the stuff later on with Bat Family and whatever. Set the next film like 2 months later. My reason why: Gotham is flooded. Set it during winter, where the flood waters have frozen over. Mr. Freeze is your villain, and have it be Cold Cold Heart. So the whole Nora situation and everything. That would be sick. That's my pitch.
I could get behind that.
And throw in some other villains. Like Penguin can go ice skating with his penguins. What if that's it? Batman hasn't worked out his gliding yet, but he gets some ice skate boots that he can click his heels and the skates pop out and he can skate around Gotham.
Yeah. Bring in Poison Ivy. She's just having a fucking meltdown because everything's frozen over and all the plant life is just dead around her, and she's like, what the fuck? Who's doing this shit?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a very, very good film.
Yeah. Right, we should probably wrap this video up and then record a wrap up for the Higgledy Piggledy podcast.
Yeah, we didn't do what the media
Well,
we have consumed.
we can do that real quick as well then. So thank you for watching this Roll for Insight. It's been a bit of a mess because, as we mentioned at the top and multiple times throughout it probably, this was recorded at the same time as Higgledy Piggledy Podcast. We got to like over 2 hours in and when we haven't even started Batman yet, or we've only just started Batman and went, we should do something separate. So it's sorry for the weirdness of it. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this Roll for Insight. We fucking love the Batman and can't wait for Bat and Bats to come back.
And also, if you've watched this video but you haven't seen the Batman, what are you doing? That's stupid. Go and watch the Batman and then come back and see if you agree with our opinions or whatever.
And if you have seen the Batman and you disagree with our opinions after having watched this, go back and watch the Batman again. Fund that so that Warner Brothers has no choice but to make a sequel. And then come back and watch this video just to check what points you disagreed with and now that you agree with, and then let us know, like, favorite, comment, subscribe. And if you watch this video, watch the film, agreed with us, go back and watch the film again anyways, because it's a good film.
And then comment saying, you guys are so right. I'm so glad I watched this video. I'm going to listen to all of your opinions from now on.
And then at Robert Pattinson, even though he's not on any social media, but apparently he does look at Reddit comments and like apparently occasionally argues with people on Reddit on secret accounts. But
and tells people to leave him alone when they're poking at his flaws.
Yeah. But hunt him down and say, look, you've just done an interview for the Batman with a Japanese VTuber. And it's the weirdest thing. It's watching this interview with a VTuber. Do you know what VTubers are?
Yeah.
Yeah, like a VTuber animate, interviewing Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz. So if you can do that for the Batman, then for the Batman 2, get interviewed by the Higgledy Piggledy podcast.
Yes, I agree.
Anyways, thanks for watching Roll for Insight. See you all next time.
Goodbye.